Most of us have that little voice in our head. You know the one I'm talking about. The one that says, you're not ready, you're not enough, that you need to stay in your lane. My guest today heard it too, and for a long time he listened. He was the quiet, behind-the-scenes IT leader doing the work, but wondering if he'd ever be seen. Until one moment changed everything. It was the moment that he decided to bet on himself, and boy, did that bet pay off big time. My guest today is the CEO of Wolf Executives, where that organization helps leaders and companies transform from the inside out. And in this conversation, you'll hear exactly what lit a fire under him, and you'll also hear us discuss modern leadership and why we both kind of think that too many leaders today get it wrong. We're going to go in head first in this inaugural episode, and you're going to leave rethinking what leadership even means. This is the Mic Drop, part of the My Friend in HR family, where we're on a mission to strip the corporate gloss off of leadership talk and bring the human back to HR. Give you the kind of conversations that make your career and maybe your workplace just a little bit better. Are you ready? All right then, let's get to work. Alrighty, friends. Some folks talk growth, but Sean Barnes embodies it. He's a close friend and colleague of mine, and his journey is wild in the best way. Sean started out as an introverted IT director, but something in this man said this could not be it. So when the opportunity presented itself, he jumped into HR leadership and he didn't play it safe. Sean leads Wolf Executives, a powerhouse consulting firm that helps businesses build better leaders, stronger teams, and smarter strategies. He's not just a strategist, he's a builder, and someone who personally inspires me to lead with more clarity and courage. Sean, welcome to the Mic Drop. How are you, my friend?
Man, that is an opening. I cannot thank you enough for the opportunity to be here, and really looking forward to us chopping it up. Thank you.
And we're going to jump right into it because, as you know, you and I are very passionate about building people, building organizations, and there's just some things that the average employee and average leader doesn't know, isn't aware of, or doesn't have the courage to face. So we are going to give them the tools today to face those challenges head on and take their leadership and their careers to the next level. So you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. So we always talk about leadership. Every time you and I get together and we have coffee, no matter, we might start talking about sports, we might be talking about cigars, but eventually we end up talking about leadership and leadership competencies. I think modern leadership is very broken today. And I think one of the single biggest mistakes that senior leaders make in today's corporate environment is that they feel that empathetic leadership is something that is like touchy-feely, hippie. I don't have time for that. We have aggressive goals to make. What is your take on that mentality in terms of empathetic leadership?
I think empathy is important as a leader. However, I also believe there is a spectrum. You can be absolutely cold, calculated, and robotic, and you can also be over here on the other end of the spectrum and lean into empathy so much that you pour yourself into every single person. And when people are operating below the line in that dark place, they can pull you down with them, so much so that you actually don't get anything done. So we have to develop skills around how we can balance and operate on this spectrum, because we do have to get things done, but we also need to lean into caring and kindness and candor and empathy. So learning to develop skills on moving back and forth to achieve an ideal outcome is really where we need to focus our energy and efforts.
So I remember talking to a leader once, and I actually made the comment, they were very cold, they were very cold. And don't get me wrong, I don't believe that every leader has to give an employee a hug, right? As a matter of fact, in some states, you probably don't want to do that. But again, distinguishing between being overly sympathetic, being responsible for the employee in terms of now you're their social worker. How do you draw that line, especially when it comes to your own personal management style, when trying to show empathy, but still got to get the job done?
This is where I think it's important to have some sort of understanding of different behavioral styles. And there are countless assessments out there, PI and DISC and Berkman and Enneagram. They all kind of do the same thing. But what's most important is that you have a level of awareness that other people have different behavioral styles. When you have that level of awareness, you know where you fall and you know where other people fall. It makes it easier for you to connect with them in the right way, because people that are highly energetic and fun and full of energy, you might want to connect with them in a certain way. Those are the people that are going to get excited, and you might bring them in for a hug. Hey, yeah, let's get this done. And then you have the other people that are usually more introverted and conscientious and direct, like, hey, this is what we got to get done. So this is also an area where you have to find that balance and understanding people. And I know this is going to sound weird, but viewing them as data sets. I know that Jason operates over here. I know that Sally operates over here. I'm going to connect with them in the way that they need to be connected with. And I know that sounds a little bit weird, touchy-feely, but it's all about being adaptable to the people on your team so that you can create that connection with them.
Right. I think it's important to form some kind of connection with your team, right? Because one of the things that's always a challenge is, especially when people get promoted, and I said this in my last episode of My Friend in HR podcast, where once you're promoted to leadership and you're promoted to manager, you are no longer responsible for getting the job done. You are now responsible for the people who actually do the work, the team that actually accomplish the day-to-day feats. In your experience, and as you've partnered with a number of organizations, are there some surefire signs that let you know that this leader might actually be out of touch with their team?
Oh, yes.
We're going to get deep. We're going to get deep, man.
We are. And before I get to that, as far as them being out of touch, whenever we talk about modern leadership being broken, I think a lot of organizations try to create a structure that's as flat as possible. You're the best engineer in the room. Now you're going to manage all of the engineers. Oh, but by the way, you also have to keep drawing tools and designing systems, and then also leading the people. So companies need to understand what leadership is and what an individual contributor is and set people up for success, because far too many times you get promoted into a leadership role, but the expectation from above is that you still need to do the thing.
Right.
And so this comes into educating most senior leadership on how this needs to work, but that's another topic. Now, whenever I think about leaders being disconnected or detached, what comes to mind for me is really the executive sitting in the ivory tower running the business by looking at spreadsheets and PowerPoints. And over time, they lose touch with what's actually going on in the company. And no, doing a once a year tour to sit in for a couple of hours at one of your locations does not get you in touch with what's going on in the business. I understand as you ascend in more and more senior leadership ranks becomes an increasingly finite resource. So you have to allocate it in the right way. Some signals to know that you are becoming too out of touch is when the numbers in the spreadsheets aren't aligning with what's going on, or you can't quite figure out what the driver is of the numbers moving in the wrong direction. You have to be able to take a step back and ask yourself, am I too detached? Do I need to go spend a week in Dallas with my team to actually understand what's going on? And so it really comes down to this self-awareness and then also having insights into what's going on in the business. And so, yes, this is a very real issue, but I see it more in the ivory tower than I do in kind of middle management.
Absolutely. So I talked about in your intro about how you bet on yourself and you took a chance on yourself and you made it work. And, and one of the things that is always a challenge is that people kind of see where you are right now and they think it kind of happened overnight. We've all stumbled, we've all skinned our knees, we've all fallen down, and we've had to pick ourselves back up. And so I'm sure over your career, not even just at Wolf Executives, that you've learned some valuable lessons through failures and making mistakes. Can I pry a little and ask you to share one of those leadership failures, and what was the lesson you learned from that?
Because I was so analytical, I thought of myself as the smartest person in the room. I would pull together all of this data, all of this information, getting feedback, figuring out all, and trying to piece together this perfect solution or put together this perfect project plan for us to execute against. And only in hindsight have I recognized that I was slowing things down far more than I thought, because my mindset was, I've got to have it perfect before we take that next step. And it does not matter how many times you model out certain scenarios in your head, how many times you figure out, okay, if this, then that, if that, then this. When you get into it, it's all going to fall apart. I think it was Mike Tyson. Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face. And now I have recognized the importance of, yes, pull some information together, go off of your gut, and then just start moving forward. And you're going to get punched in the face. You're going to get tripped up. Good. Now you can learn and pivot and adapt. And so the biggest thing that, as I reflect back on, was don't spend so much time analyzing, spend more time moving forward.
That forward momentum is massive. And sometimes the biggest thing is just getting started, right? Just getting this thing going. I'm going to talk about something that you and I see all the time on LinkedIn, on social media posts, right? And there seems to be this growing rift between the average employee and management, almost adversarial at this point. There seems to be a lot more rhetoric around, and I don't want to use the word rhetoric because these are based on people's actual experiences, but there seems to be a lot more about how managers are out of touch, but managers feel like employees are not loyal and they just they jump to the next shiny wheel or things like that. So I'll tell you what I feel, and I'd love to get your insight on this. I see it both ways. Okay. I'm an employee, even though I may be at a certain level within management, I am an employee, and I've always been an employee. And in my viewpoint, I think that leaders have gotten to a point where they do feel like they're automatically the smartest person in the room. I do feel like sometimes that they don't take into account the advice of the folks who are actually doing the day-to-day work. And you talk about leaders, and leaders say, well, employees are going to leave in 2 years and they want to be CEO in 6 months. And that's not far from the truth, depending on who you're talking about. But when you see this rift, I think the nature of work has changed since our grandfathers or even our parents worked. When you got a job back then, it was based mostly on the idea that you're going to work at this company, you're going to devote 20, 30 years of your life. When you leave, there's a pension, you get to retire with dignity, you get a gold watch, and you're able to retire and live out your final years the way you want to because you put in that work in the beginning. You fast forward now, and there's no pensions anymore. And I get it, right? If you look at the cost of a pension plan, a defined benefit plan at a company, it is immense. And employees don't see that. They just see a loss of benefit. They see a lot of perks getting pulled back. And so then the employee's sitting there and they're like, you want me to be loyal, but you're not really giving me a whole lot of reasons to be loyal. But at the same time, managers are saying, well, why would I be loyal? Because all the trends, even from our powerful HR team, tells us that I'll probably only keep you for 2 hours. And it creates this cyclical, almost a self-fulfilling prophecy on both ends. 2 questions. Number one, do you agree with kind of my overall summary of the world at work today? And 2, if you do, what do we do to change that?
Yes, the first answer that I have. I do agree with it. And, because I've led HR teams, been the head of HR for large publicly traded organizations. So I understand exactly what you described. And it is this challenging place that companies are operating in now because the employees come to the table. I want you to invest in developing me. I want all of these benefits. And yes, I want to be the CEO in 6 months. Okay, let's slow down a little bit. We can invest in developing you. And yes, here's what the benefits look like. We're doing our best to pour into you. So we have to have some real candid conversations on the front end to create alignment. And sometimes that alignment's just never going to be there. And that's okay. And we need to be okay with letting those employees go their own way and find a company where they can be the CEO in 6 months. Now, I know I'm kind of hammering home on that because I know exactly what you're saying whenever you talk about that. This seems to be a little bit of a trend, and that's, again, a topic for another day. But this whole idea saying everybody can be a CEO and you can be a millionaire and do your own thing, and it's very appealing and alluring, but it's not reality. So whenever we think about how do we actually address this, there's a lot of instances where companies will pour into building and developing the people, and then the people leave anyways. And man, that's tough. That's a tough pill to swallow. When you give them exactly what they want. You pay them above and beyond. You develop them. You give them opportunity, and then they still leave. That's a knife to the gut. I mean, it is brutal. I've experienced it on my own teams in the past. And the first time someone left after I had poured into them, it was tough for me. It was a tough pill for me to swallow. But they ended up going on and doing more and more bigger things. And as I watched, I actually had this appreciation because my mindset has shifted over the years. Yes, I'm going to pour into people and help set them up for success and create opportunities. And if they grow within our organization and have even greater impact, cool, we're winning. If they go find another opportunity where they can continue to grow, create greater impact, and provide for their family, cool. I've played my part in helping them be successful. Now, this takes us shifting into more of an abundance mindset, because if your star performer leaves and it crushes your company, you are failing as a leader. This is where we get into building that bench. You need to be investing in developing all layers of your organization, because if they leave, cool, now we have an opportunity for that next layer down to step up and grow. So it should be this mindset of how can I elevate every single member of my team at every layer in the company. This goes back to the abundance mindset that not a lot of leaders have. Now, one thing that I do want to touch on, and I'm actually going to pose this question to you, is we have all of these employees that live their life and complain about the company's not giving them resources, not investing in them, on and on and on. We can make some assumptions that at some point, those employees expressing those grievances found themselves in a senior leadership role and then are not giving the people beneath them the opportunities that they themselves wanted. So this is something that I'm still wrapping my head around trying to understand, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I mean, to be honest, I call it corporate hypocrisy, right? I mean, look, we can't get so full of ourselves as leaders to not realize that we are where we are because someone somewhere gave us a chance. Someone invested in us. Someone looked at you and said, hey, I'm going to elevate you to this position because of X, Y, and Z. It could be for a bunch of great reasons. Maybe you've done your time and you've cut your teeth and you've done the work and it's time to get promoted. Maybe you were just the last person on the sinking ship and they didn't have a choice because everyone else has abandoned ship. I mean, but at some point, someone tapped you on the shoulder and said, hey, I want you to take this leadership role. And hopefully at some point in time, the organization is invested in you. But we can't forget that it's also our obligation, not only as good stewards of what we claim to be the company's most valuable assets, but also as leaders to continue to pull people up behind us. And as leaders, our job is to eliminate risk and vulnerabilities. And one of the biggest risks and vulnerabilities in an organization deals with human capital, because you can buy technology, you can buy systems, you can buy equipment, you can do all those things. Buying institutional knowledge, you just can't do it. And when you talk about talent, you got two options. You either grow it internally or you buy it externally. Sure, we can put a bunch of flashy titles and a bunch of systems. We can call it 9-cell. We can call it succession plan. We can call it whatever we want. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, are we going to grow our talent or are we going to go out on the market and get that talent? And if and it should be a combination of both. Going back to your question, we have to remember that if we've gotten promoted, we got there because someone invested in us and took a chance on us. And we need to make sure we do that, not only because it's the right thing to do, but as leaders, our job is to make sure that our business model, our sales, our whatever our value proposition is to our clients is not dependent on one person. Because even if that person stays and they're loyal and they don't go anywhere, things happen. Let's say that person's in a tragic accident and they can't come into the office. Let's say that something emergency happens and they have to focus on their home for a couple of months. Life happens. And so if you have a key role and if he or she wins the lottery, we are in trouble and we do nothing about it and we don't invest in that next generation of talent, that next up and coming group, then that is shame on us as leaders. And I think that's where a lot of us miss the boat, because we just think that these people are our chess pieces. It's like we treat them like a stapler on our desk. Well, this is mine, and I own this. No, you don't own it. Because in my viewpoint, we're all kind of mercenaries. We are giving our talents to the highest bidder or the person who can give to us what we want. But we have to plan for that as leaders, because if we don't, it makes you a crappy leader in my book. And two, you're opening up your organization to some unnecessary risk.
Yeah. I mean, yes, and yes.
I appreciate it. See, I didn't realize I was going to get interviewed either. So there we go. I thought if I had my own show, I wouldn't have to interview. I wouldn't have to. You're changing that whole paradigm. So you and I have had some deep talks. So just so you guys know, and one day you and I are going to have a conversation about branding and networking and things like that. We might talk a little bit about it.
All right.
But in some of our coffee chats, we have shared a lot of stories about how we were raised and how we were brought up, and the challenges that we've gone through. That makes us into the people that we are today. I want to tap into that just a little bit, and because I know your story, and I think people who are listening can hear about this, because right now they're like, who is this amazing guy with this cool logo? Guys, isn't the logo cool, right? But can you recall a moment or a lesson you learned from your childhood or your upbringing that influences the way you lead today?
Oh, all right.
I asked that question knowing how you're probably going to answer it, because I wish I had popcorn, because this is such a great.
I was about to say that there wasn't one moment, but there were a few key moments in my life. As you're aware, whenever I was 3, my biological father bounced, abandoned us, made it very challenging for my mom, single mother, during the formative years of my life. Now, whenever I was about 9-ish, she started dating and then married a man named Lamar Barnes, who adopted me. So I was about 10, I think, whenever he adopted me officially. Fast forward to 20 years old, and he passed away. And I started to build this narrative over the first few decades of my life that every leader, every male role model, father figure in my life was abandoning me. And whenever I think about how that shaped me as a leader, I know the emotional toll that those situations ended up exacting on me. And I never, ever want any member of my team, anybody that I know or that I'm close with, to feel like I am abandoning them. This is a double-edged sword, because when you lean into everybody and pouring everything you have into everyone around you, it is exhausting, and you end up stretching yourself too thin. You have to find this balance, and you have to fill your cup first, and then everything else overflows into those around you. So to pull all that into how does that shape me as a leader? Servant leadership. You have the book on your bookshelf, Leaders Eat Last. This is my mode of operation. The people on my team, ever since starting Wolf Executives, have made more than I do by a very large margin, to be honest. And I think they truly value and appreciate, and they give me their all, and I'm giving them my all. But very few leaders are going to lead that way, because it can crush you. And what I've seen, some of the highest performers, the people that are the strongest leaders, people have a tendency to think that they have something special about them. And I'm going to argue that we're actually broken. We don't have an off switch. And again, this can crush you, but when you pour everything you have into everyone around you, it is the most fulfilling thing that you can ever do in your life.
Wow. So again, thanks for sharing that, right? It's one of those things where understanding where someone's come from helps you understand their journey into the person that's in front of them right now. And I mean, like I said, just to kind of share a little bit, about my story, in contrast, I had 2 parents, both biological parents, but we were like a family of 8. So 4 boys, 4 girls, massive, massive family. And it's one of those things where, we lived in what would be considered the projects. That was my first memory as a kid. But it's so funny because when I reflect on my past, I did not know we were poor. And that was the magic of my mom, right? The strength of my mother. And we both come from very strong women who overcame insane obstacles, but still made miracles happen all the time, right? My mom helped shape me into the person I am, and one of the things that I remember about my mom is that So I mentioned we have, having 8 siblings. Well, 2 siblings have passed on. And, being a parent myself, people always say that the one pain that should never exist is, the pain of a parent having to bury a child. And now that I have a kid, I can't fathom going through that, much less twice. And my mom, who is the matriarch, if you ever met my mom, she's that Louisiana Southern belle. She's always speaking polite. She's always, talking about, hey, give glory to the man upstairs. No matter how many successes you get, understand where your blessings come from. And that statement right there is one of the things that I've held near and dear to my heart since I kind of got into this corporate game. Because when you're trying to climb that corporate ladder, Sean, when you're trying to make things happen and get promoted and get increases and get great titles and things like that, and you get them, the world, and sometimes your boss in your organization will try to make you think, it's almost a Jedi mind trick, that like they are your great benefactors, that you owe everything to them. And let's be clear. Yes, you should be thankful. Right? You should definitely be thankful. But when my mom told me that, she was like, yeah, son, you'll have great bosses, you'll have great companies and things like that. But understand who's really blessing you. It's not necessarily your boss. It's not necessarily your company. The man upstairs is using them to bless you. And when you feel like you belong to something bigger, and this is not meant to be a pulpit, for those folks who may have different faiths or whatever the case is, whether you believe in karma or positive energy or just putting goodness into the world and it coming back to you, just understand that when you aren't beholden to an individual or an organization and you feel beholden to something bigger, it's actually pretty freeing to make great choices for yourself. And you don't feel as shackled as you would be, as you feel like, oh, all of my success is tied to my boss. And when my boss were to leave, I'm totally, totally screwed. So yeah, so my mom kind of poured that into me growing up. And I find myself as I get older, reflecting on the words that she and my dad kind of instilled on me, which kind of helps me become kind of the person that I am today. So thanks for sharing that little piece there. Let's switch gears just a little bit. You hit it on this earlier about leaders sometimes feeling like they have to be the smartest person in the room. And I think, again, I think it's really a false narrative, these leaders who walk around like, oh, I'm invincible and I'm the smartest person in the room. And when they make obvious mistakes, like they refuse to take any ownership, right? The cool thing about being at the top of the echelon of that top box is there's a lot of people below you to blame if you need some smoke screens, right? But in your opinion, how important do you think it is in this day and age for leaders to admit their mistakes, and what impact does it have on their team if they are able to admit when they themselves have made a mistake?
These leaders try to posture themselves as, I'm the smartest in the room, I'm the tip of the spear, I'm the best there is, type of a thing. And then when mistakes happen, they point blame to every other person on their team, and they forget that it's their team. And when you actually start taking accountability, the people on your team, and many times your peers, will actually appreciate and respect you even more, because ownership and accountability are becoming increasingly rare in business. When somebody actually steps up and holds themselves accountable and acknowledges, this was my call, I made a mistake on it, and here's how we're going to fix it. All of a sudden, everybody in the room, everybody around is like, all right, I can appreciate that. We are all just human after all. But they live in this perpetual state of, I'm perfect and everybody else is the problem. And that mindset actually erodes the trust that other people have with them, because they view them lesser, because they're posturing, they're positioning. And this is something, it's kind of one of those things where these leaders go into it with this particular mindset, and it's doing the exact opposite of what they think it's doing.
I'm going to bring up something, and you and I have joked about this a few times. So in meetings, one of the things, there's a saying I usually say, overcooks my grits. I got that from somewhere. One thing that overcooks my grits when I'm in these corporate meetings, it's so funny, the dynamics at play when you're in a particular meeting, right? There's some people who they want to be the loudest person in the room. There's the leaders who have to feel like they're the smartest person in the room. There are folks who use a lot of words, but don't say a damn thing. Oh, there's folks in the room that don't say anything, but then when they do speak, they have these profound thoughts, right? But people love to, use buzzwords and things when they're in meetings. And they do it because they want to show that they're educated. I went to Harvard. That's my Harvard accent. Harvard.
Ever heard of it?
Or Cornell, right? Yeah. I like Cornell's fine. But it's one of those things where people love to use buzzwords to seem smarter than what they really are. So, Sean Barnes, what is that one buzzword? Or it could be a trend, but what is that buzzword when you hear in a meeting, it just makes you roll your eyes? Like, oh God, this person has no clue what they're talking. Feel free to lay it on if you got multiple ones.
Man, this is...
I'll tell you mine.
Yes, please.
Strategic. We have a strategic initiative. Like, I think we've gotten to a point where we feel like everything has to have the word strategic in front of it. Or even with job descriptions and job titles. I see in HR, every job title has have to have the word strategic. And I'm like, and not that I don't feel like everybody can have a piece of the strategy, but I think it's so overused to make folks feel more important. It used to be the word global. I used to see the word global in front of everybody's job title. And I'm like, oh, really? You're global. So tell me how you feel about things in Asia. Well, really, I just do North America. But your title says global, And so global and strategy, I think, are two terms that are just overused way too often.
I mean, I think we could come up with a laundry list of these terms, but what I just can't shake, and it's not necessarily a term, but when people do nothing but brag about their MBA, it is a part of it is who they are. Every single meeting, oh, whenever I got my MBA, and then I've known people that have gone and gotten their MBA and failed their way through it. That's a whole nother topic, and still somehow got the degree. And then they come back and then they start using terminology, talking about P&Ls and margins, and like, I know you don't know what that means. Why are you using it in the conversation? It just walks all over me. The whole topic of MBAs, this can be a little bit contentious. I see value in getting an MBA, but what I think happens is you have far too many people that they get out of high school, they get their 4-year degree, they go get their MBA, and then they go get dropped in somewhere, and they know nothing about business. They have this declarative knowledge. I have read this book, therefore I know financials. Okay. I have built a company, therefore I understand financials. That's declarative knowledge versus procedural knowledge. Very different. Now, the people that I've known that came out, got their degree, started working, spent years in business, and then went back and got an MBA. Now they have all of that historical knowledge and life and business experience to pull upon to extract the most out of the lessons learned when getting an MBA. But I'm sure that you know of some people where an MBA is their absolute identity. There was a CIO early in my career, like the dude wouldn't shut up. Every single, whenever I got my MBA, in my MBA program, I learned that wears me out, clearly. And not a word or phrase. I know I went way down a rabbit hole there.
No.
That's probably one of the things that torques me up the most.
No, it's true. And it's going to lead me to my next question, because I'm going to go ahead and do away with my teleprompter for a second and go off script. So when you look at today's workforce and the value of a degree, right? It seems like that's shifting, because I know when I was coming up, I'm a Gen X. I know you claim to be a millennial. I don't believe them, guys. Again, hey, listen, go in the comments. Do you believe Sean is a millennial? Anyway, it's the beard, man. It's the seasoned beard that gives you more ties. I think, yeah. But nowadays, it's becoming more, the question of the value of the degree becomes more and more of a topic, because when I was growing up, yes, if you wanted to be in business and if you wanted to climb the corporate ladder, 4-year degree, absolutely had to have it. And if you wanted to become management, got to go get that MBA. I'm one of those folks that you just talked about. Just got my MBA 2 years ago. And that did kind of chap my hide a little bit in terms of like when you're in school and folks who have never spent a day at work want to talk to me about business. And I'm like, nah, that's book theory. That's not real. But do you think that having a degree is as important nowadays as it is to be successful in business? And let's take the entrepreneurship out of it, right? But if you want to be successful in a company, do you think a degree even matters nowadays?
Yes, because people that have the advanced degrees place a considerable amount of weight on the value of the degree. Now, if we look at the actual operations of the business, I've seen people with a high school degree diploma and 0 college run circles around those with advanced degrees. And those with advanced degrees would still look down on them because they don't have those 3 letters behind their name. And so to answer your question, yes, there is value, but not for the reasons that you think. When it comes to execution and moving the business forward, I don't think there's as much value in the advanced degrees. But from a relational issue and the whole business politics side of things, yes, there is still value. I was having conversations with, and this was at my former employer. I had 2 of my directors that reported to me we were trying to hire a payroll manager. And we had one candidate that came in and years of experience in ADP Workforce Now, glowing reviews, but didn't have a review. And then we had another person over here with an MBA and 2 years of experience and no work history. And they were leaning towards the person with the MBA. And I was like, whoa, hold on. What? Why are we doing? Well, they don't have a degree. I'm like, guys, I don't have a degree. And y'all both report to me. Like, do you think less of me because I don't have a 4-year degree? I only have an associate's degree? Well, no. It's like, how about we hire the candidate with the requisite skills for success instead of letters behind their name? Now, eventually, the person with letters behind their name will get the necessary skills to be successful, but let's focus on core competencies and tenacity and passion and grit, because skills can be learned. So I get a little bit fiery on this topic, clearly, but I think that it doesn't carry as much weight. And we see a lot of big organizations that it's not a requisite for hiring now, like it used to be. You think back 10, 15 years ago, yes, you definitely needed a degree to get in the door. Now it's less and less common.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I think there's a time and place where, yes, I would say a degree is required, right? So would you go to a doctor that hadn't been to medical school, right?
Exactly.
Would you hire
I do want a degree. I don't want a doctor who's like, oh, if I could just get in there.
If I get my hands in your guts, I swear I could figure it out, right? I too have 2 lungs and I can figure it out. I hate our time is coming to an end. I really do, because you and I can go on and on all day about these things. But I would be remiss if I did not, let you know that we are at the point of this discussion where you must give your mic drop. And so for folks of us who are new to the mic drop, this is the point where our guests give our listeners that one golden piece of advice. Either it's advice that they themselves have gotten from someone else, or they just learned through their own career journey. And this could be towards leadership. We spend a lot of time talking about leadership. This could be about just achieving your dreams and goals and aspirations. Whatever you want. What is the official Sean Barnes mic drop for today?
We spend far too much time in our lives paralyzed by fear. What if they laugh at me? What if they judge me? What if I screw it up? And thinking back on my life, I can't help but wonder how much farther along I would have been had I just started moving forward. And the mic drop here is for everybody. Fear is a mile wide, but it's only an inch deep. You just step into it. And each step you take, it's building your confidence and forging you into a greater version of yourself. And the more you do, the more you will start to understand that all of that fear over the years was made up. You just step into it and start moving forward. And that is how you step into your greatness.
Drop. Sean, as always, brother, appreciate your time, appreciate your insight, and appreciate your opinion. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Sean Barnes with Wolf Executives. We will have all of his social media links. So if you want to find him, we're going to make it really easy for you to find Sean. And ladies and gentlemen, remember, as always, that your job is meant to support your life. Your life is not meant to support your job. Until next time, my friends.